Welcome back for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at Dr. John Dee.
Oh, yeah.
Super fascinating guy.
Absolutely.
And as you all know, he was a scholar and an advisor to Queen Elizabeth I.
Right.
But we're going to be uncovering a side of Dee that you might not know about. A little bit hidden, within the pages of his diaries.
Ooh, personal diaries.
Yeah.
That's always fun.
They're fascinating because they reveal his obsession with the angelic realm.
Yeah, it wasn't just like a passing interest for him either.
Right.
It was like years and years and years of him trying to actually contact angels.
Yeah, and communicate with them.
Yeah, trying to like build a bridge to this like other realm, the celestial unknown.
Well, let's get into it then.
Let's do it.
So we know that Dee had this incredible library,
Right.
one of the largest in England at the time.
Massive.
But it wasn't just the size, right? It was the diversity.
Yeah.
You would find books on mathematics next to books on alchemy, next to philosophy, next to astronomy.
It's like he was trying to find this like connection between all of these different areas of study.
Yeah, it's like a unifying theory of everything almost.
Right, exactly, yeah. And he wasn't just a mathematician or an astronomer or an alchemist.
Yeah.
He was all of them. He was a true polymath.
Like the ultimate Renaissance man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And his interest in angels, it wasn't separate from all these other things, right?
Right.
He saw this angelic knowledge as like the key to understanding the universe.
Yeah, it's like connecting the dots between like science and philosophy and the divine.
Yeah.
So it's like he's trying to create this like grand synthesis of knowledge,
Right.
bringing together the earthly and the celestial.
Absolutely.
But how did he go about like actually trying to contact these angels?
So this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
He really believed that angels held the secrets to the universe. The answers to life's big questions.
Yeah.
But he couldn't just like directly talk to them.
Right.
It was too hard.
Yeah.
So he needed someone to help him.
Like a medium.
Yeah, a scryer. That's what they called them.
Okay.
Someone who could be like the in-between.
And that's where Edward Kelly comes in.
Exactly.
Edward Kelly. Now, he had a little bit of a controversial reputation, didn't he?
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, some people thought he was a forger. Others thought he was into necromancy.
Not exactly the most upstanding citizen.
Not exactly the kind of guy you'd expect a scholar like Dee to be hanging out with.
Yeah, but Dee was convinced of his abilities.
Okay.
Kelly said that he could actually see and hear angels.
Really?
Yeah, through this thing called a shoe stone.
A shoe stone? What is that?
It's basically like a polished crystal or obsidian, and it's used for divination.
So like a crystal ball, but instead of looking into the future, he was having conversations.
Yeah, talking with angels, and Dee wrote down all of their conversations in his diaries.
Wow, and these weren't just small talk.
Oh, no.
We're talking years of dialogue here, covering everything from alchemy to politics.
Cosmology, secrets of creation, you name it.
Wow. Okay, so we have this scholar, John Dee, obsessed with angels, working with this kind of unconventional guy, Edward Kelly, recording all these conversations. But here's the thing. They weren't speaking English or Latin or any known language.
Nope, it was his brand new language.
They called it Enochian.
Enochian, yeah.
So imagine, you're trying to decipher a language spoken by angels.
It's kind of mind-blowing.
It is. And there are all these phrases, cryptic phrases like ol sanf vorsk isel framiddle.
Yeah, you try to figure that one out.
Exactly. And people today are still trying to understand Enochian.
Yeah, some people think it's a genuine angelic language, like a glimpse into the divine,
Yeah.
Others think that maybe it was Kelly making stuff up, or even Dee's subconscious, some sort of like, secret language from his own mind.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So we've got this scholar, the scryer, the secret language, but what did the angels want?
That is the question, isn't it?
Yeah, what were they trying to tell Dee?
We'll get into that. But first, we need to understand what Dee was asking.
All right, fair enough.
What kind of questions was he even asking these angels?
Right, good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really amazing to think about, like, what kinds of questions Dee would have been asking these angels.
Yeah, I mean, was he looking for like big philosophical insights or something more practical?
Right, exactly.
I think that's what's so cool about the diaries.
Yeah.
They show this guy who is struggling with like the biggest mysteries of the universe,
Yeah.
but also just like everyday problems,
Yeah.
We see him asking about God and the cosmos,
Right.
but also about politics, like what to do about, international relations.
Oh, wow.
And even personal stuff, too.
Really?
Yeah, money troubles, family
So
arguments.
he was like treating the angels as like
Yeah.
divine
Yeah,
consultants.
like advisors with a hotline to, the ultimate source.
Yeah.
I think this is really important because it shows us how complex Dee's thinking was.
Right.
He was into science and reason, like logic. But he also totally believed in magic and the power of these angels.
So he was trying to like combine these two.
Totally. Like he thought that maybe he could use this higher knowledge to change things in the real world.
Okay, so let's get into some specifics here. Like, what were some of the things he asked about, and what did the angels say?
Well, one example that's really interesting is about the New World. America.
Oh, yeah.
Dee was super into exploration. He thought England should be a big part of shaping this new world.
Right.
And according to the diaries, the angels told him that England had a divine right to go and colonize these new lands.
Whoa, a divine right to colonization.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy stuff, especially from where we're sitting today, right?
Yeah.
Makes you wonder how Dee felt about that, what he thought it meant.
It's interesting because it makes you think about belief and power
Right.
and how people interpret things.
Exactly. Like, was Dee just accepting everything the angels said, or was he seeing it through his own ideas about, what England should be doing? You have to remember, he was an advisor to the Queen. He was very invested in England being powerful.
Yeah, the historical context is really important here.
It is.
I mean, England was surrounded by all these Catholic countries.
Right. And there was always the threat of invasion.
Right, and people were always questioning the Queen's legitimacy, too.
Exactly. So you can imagine how all that might have influenced how Dee saw these messages from the angels.
Totally. It's like he was trying to figure out this mix of science and religion and politics.
Yeah.
And he was looking to these angels for answers.
Like they were some kind of higher authority.
But did it work? I mean, did he get anything out of all these conversations?
That's where things get a bit sad, actually.
Oh.
Despite all the notes and everything, he started to get frustrated.
Really?
Yeah, because nothing was really happening. The messages were cryptic, hard to understand.
So the big changes he was hoping for, they weren't really happening?
No, not really.
Yeah.
And he started to wonder if maybe it was all fake.
Did he actually question the angels? Like, did he lose faith?
It's hard to know for sure, but things definitely got tense between him and Kelly.
Oh, yeah.
He started to think that Kelly was messing with him, maybe even making things up.
Wow.
And then there was this whole incident with the angels telling them to swap wives.
Wait, what? The angels told them to swap wives?
Yeah, that's what the diaries say.
I mean, was Dee really buying that?
It's one of those historical mysteries, right?
Yeah.
Was he being manipulated by Kelly, or this is something some scholars have thought about?
Okay.
Maybe it was some sort of psychological experiment?
An experiment like he was trying to test the limits of, morality and all that.
Could be. Remember, Dee was a scientist as well as a spiritual guy.
Right, right.
Maybe he was trying to figure out how belief works or free will.
Wow, that's a lot to consider. Like, this one thing just opens up all these questions about faith and relationships and how we know what's real. So what happened next? So, like, was this the beginning of the end for Dee? I mean, it's hard to imagine what happened after that, especially back then.
Yeah, the wife swapping thing, it was definitely a turning point for Dee.
Yeah.
His relationship with Kelly totally fell apart, and Dee ended up going back to England by himself.
Alone.
Yeah, and he spent the rest of his life trying to get back in the Queen's good graces.
Oh, trying to regain her favor.
Yeah, and he's trying to get some financial security too,
Yeah, right.
But it's sad because he never really got back to the same level of success he had before.
So after years of trying to talk to angels, writing down everything, pushing the boundaries,
Yeah,
it seems like he ended up with nothing.
it does seem that way. Kind of a tragic ending for someone so brilliant.
Yeah, it makes you think, is this like a cautionary tale about getting too obsessed with something, or how even the smartest people can be misled?
It's easy to see it that way, but I think there's more to it than that.
Yeah, I mean, we can't just write him off as a failure.
No, not at all.
There's so much to learn from his story.
Exactly. So maybe instead of focusing on what he didn't achieve,
Yeah.
we should think about how bold he was,
Yeah, okay.
He wasn't afraid to challenge what everyone thought, to explore these unknown parts of the mind and spirit.
Right, like he was going beyond what was considered normal back then.
Totally. And in a way, it makes him kind of like an early scientist,
Really?
Yeah, like a pioneer for people who are pushing the limits of knowledge today.
That's a really cool way to think about it. We always think of science and magic as opposites.
Right.
But back then, the lines were blurry.
Definitely.
He was using whatever tools he had, whether it was math or talking to angels, to try to understand the universe.
Yeah, and maybe that's what his legacy should be about.
Okay.
Not about whether he got specific results, but that he was always searching, always curious.
That drive to learn, to connect with something bigger than himself.
It's something we can all relate to, right?
Absolutely. I mean, maybe we're not using shoe stones or speaking Enochian, but we're still looking for answers, for meaning, for those moments of awe, like Dee was.
Yeah, his story with all its twists and turns, it's really a story about what it means to be human.
Right, to try to make sense of the world, to reach for the unknown.
Exactly, to figure out where we fit in the grand scheme of things.
So as we finish up our deep dive on Dr. John Dee, what's the one thing you'd want our listeners to remember?
I hope they'll see Dee as more than just a historical figure,
Yeah.
He's like a reflection of our own hopes and dreams.
Okay.
His search for knowledge, even though it was unusual, it shows how much we all want to connect, to find meaning, to experience something beyond the ordinary.
And in a world that feels so divided and confusing sometimes, that's a really important message.
It is.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. This is a great time for our listeners to go and learn more about Dr. John Dee.
Definitely.
There's tons of books and articles out there.
Yeah, go down the rabbit hole.
Exactly. And if this deep dive sparked your curiosity, keep searching, keep asking questions. Heck, maybe even try to decipher some Enochian yourself.
You never know what you might find.
You never know. All right, everyone, that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.